Hello and welcome back to Invincible Asia. I'm George from Movie Misfit, and this is another episode of Untold Stories, where this month I get the chance and the privilege to speak with the wonderful and legendary Richard Norton. Well, Richard Norton, thank you very much for joining me. This is an absolute honor. Absolutely. I mean, this is another dream ticked off my list. I have quite a long list, but yeah, I'm getting there. But it is an absolute treat. You're someone that has really been inspiring to me over the years, through both what I've watched with your interviews and, of course, in your movies. I've never seen anyone be able to kick like you do in a pair of tight jeans, I have to say. I remember, watching Shane O'Brien and seeing you kicking in those jeans. I was like, who is this guy?
The worst one was, the big, and I should have learnt my lesson, but the worst one was Force 5.
Oh,
that was my first lead role, and I remember.
I have it here. Yep, there we go.
That was the first lead. And I remember wardrobe getting me all decked out and everything, because you got to understand, even wardrobe, unless they're very experienced in action movies, they don't necessarily cater for what you have to do.
Of course.
So I remember these jeans. I thought, oh, this looks good. It was very 70s sort of style. And
yeah.
And I remember getting out, and I think I had to, back then, as you know, most kicks were like crescent kicks and everything. They're a little outdated now, but I remember thinking, oh my God, I said, I can't even kick above my knee in these jeans. I look good, but not very functional, and that's when I sort of went, oh, okay, I've got to learn to look after myself. With whatever I'm dressed in.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there was always one thing that always stuck out to me is, how can this guy kick with his jeans on, So I mean, Force 5 was a movie that I gotten later. Again, I started watching Kung Fu movies from the age of 5. From the age of 12, I started collecting them as videos. And then when I started traveling around the age of 20 out to the States, of course, my eyes were, because here in Northern Ireland, it's not a vast kung fu movies and martial arts movies. They weren't really the thing to bring into Northern Ireland. So I was always lucky to find something that was like a treasure to me to find. And I would travel the length of the country on public transport looking for video stores, it was crazy. But of course, the days before internet, So when I got to America, I managed to pick up this copy of Force 5, which I was so excited to see. And of course, now it's out there on Blu-ray and it's, all exciting. I still get a kick out of watching videotapes, I have to say. It's very nostalgic. But before that, I think one of the earliest movies that I had seen you in, and I only recognized then it was yourself after getting to know who you were through Jackie and Samo's movies, was Jim Carrey. I love Jim Carrey. Oh my gosh, I love it. It's just such a weird movie.
No, and it's amazing to me how much of a cult following Jim Carrey has.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's bizarre. And, originally Jim Carrey was supposed to star Christopher Atkins. Do you know Christopher Atkins?
Yeah, right.
With Brooke Shields. And anyway, it morphed into what it morphed into, because Freddie Weintraub, for those who don't know, Freddie Weintraub was producer of Enter the Dragon. So he wanted to create an American version of Jackie Chan. And obviously, with all the acrobatics in the Hong Kong sort of style of fights and everything else, he figured if he could get someone like Kurt Thomas, who at the time was an Olympic level gymnast, and teach him martial arts, and then he would achieve that objective. The difficult thing was, and bless, R.I.P.'s Kurt. Kurt died, a couple of years ago, unfortunately. The lead in Jim Carrey, an amazing athlete, but the only problem with Jim Carrey was, and by the way, do you want to get into this now, or do you want to move ahead and then we can go back into more detail?
No, listen, work away. I want this to be as natural as,
Well, Kurt was obviously, phenomenal athlete and gymnast. The only problem is that he couldn't do a lot of the gymnastic stuff unless it was almost like a gymnasium setting.
Of course.
You know, and of course I went to Florida. He had a power tumbling show, gymnastics show in Florida, and I went month or 2 months beforehand to start training Kurt, teaching him how to punch and kick, because he'd never done martial arts before.
Yes.
And that's when I realized, well, as it's all very well to train someone in martial arts, but it doesn't happen overnight. And they forget that the Hong Kong stunt team, especially a team like Sammo Hung or Jackie Chan they're able to do the fight stuff with the gymnastics just about on any surface you give them, whether it's bitumen roads or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that was a bit of a restriction in because you might remember there's a great scene where we're in a kind of a village square and Kurt runs in, and we tried to disguise this apparatus to make it look like what you would tie goats up to.
Yes.
It's obviously a pommel horse, it's a pommel horse in the middle of the city square. And another thing, he's running and grabs this bar. Well, that's kind of like a bar. That was the excuse. But in its own way, it was almost tongue-in-cheek. It was kind of funny, and that's what appealed to people, It's like a serious, full-on action film, though that's what it was intended to be.
Of course.
But,
I mean, I saw that probably when I was about 9 or 10 years of age, and it terrified me. Those scenes in the village when all the locals were kind of coming in on him, it was quite terrifying to a kid.
And you know what? All the locals that you see with all the pitchforks.
Yeah.
They weren't actors. They were literally hired from a local hospital that deals with alcoholism.
Dear
and
Lord.
Also,
Wow.
societal illnesses. And so those people were just basically told what to do. And I'll tell you another funny incident. I'm on a horse and we were told on this city square, you see Zamir, who is playing riding, we're on Cobble Street and I'm supposed to ride across the city square. And we were warned by the horse coordinators, the experts, be very careful because there was nothing on the horse's hooves to stop them slipping.
Yes, of course.
Very careful that you could end up doing this. The horse could do the splits, and they were basically telling me how to get off the horse.
Yes,
I could ride, but not nowhere near expert. And so I'm just thinking, oh shit, this is all I need. I'm riding along on this horse, and if it does the splits, I've got to be able to get off. So I'm very focused as Zamir, going straight forward. Well, unbeknownst to me, so you've got all these village people that I'm riding through going, with this pitchfork and everything. We get to the end of the take, and this one crew guy says, wow, you were really in character, weren't you? And I said, why? What do you mean? He says, wow, I mean, you didn't even look back when you just knocked that guy flat on his face, with your horse.
Oh, Jesus.
I had no idea. So, and it's in the take. If you watch the movie again, you will see my horse's chest hit this guy back and he just disappears out of frame.
Wow.
Okay. I had no idea. And I thought, oh my goodness.
This is what I love about doing this, because I want to hear untold stories. I want to know things that nobody else knows. It's okay reading the trivia on IMDb here and there, but sometimes you just need to hear it from the horse's mouth, right? So with that, obviously, that also starred Conan Lee, who was kind of an up-and-coming Hong Kong star at the time. I mean, obviously, didn't stick around for too long.
Right.
You did a few, but did you work with him much? Because I know you did a bit of fight choreography on the movie also, right?
Yes, and I was helping put the fights together. Yeah, no, Conan, I don't know what happened to him, but he was great to work with. And, again, my biggest concern was trying to make Kurt passable.
Yes, okay, yeah.
With the fights and all that sort of stuff. And someone like Conan Lee can look after himself, as so to speak,
Yes.
And John Barrett was another Chuck Norris black belt who was in that movie, and he was a very capable martial artist. So you had people that knew what they were doing. So and people, even though you do fight coordinating, which I'm doing a lot now, it's always a collaborative effort. It's never
Sure.
one person, or it shouldn't be.
Yes.
You do your job if you try and find out what the individual actor is capable of, and then try and mold the choreography around
Of
their
course, yeah.
piece, and that's what it was. And look, it was a hard shoot, but it was really, really good shoot. It was shot in what was then Yugoslavia, and of course now would be Croatia, and fascinating countryside. But yeah, I just really enjoyed the shoot. Big Bob shot. Remember the really big powerlifting guy with the blonde hair?
Yeah.
He was a character. We were always playing practical jokes through the whole thing. And before we go on, we don't want to labor too long on Jim Carter, but there was this time we had one of these dogs, which you might remember. They just supposedly wild dogs sort of chasing birds through the courtyard. One of them, they actually was a wolfhound. I don't know exactly the breed, but apparently they used them to hunt wolves, and this thing was huge, and it had scars on its ears and everything. Anyway, on one stage in between takes, I'm standing on the other side of this courtyard, and the dog trainer, now I know, was standing with Bob Shot. Anyway, I'm sitting there. Next minute, I look across, and this dog is sprinting toward me. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? It's sprinting toward me. And it literally came up. I stood up like this, and it got its mouth. Well, I'll do this. It sort of went on my groin. It put its jaw like this and starts walking backwards, taking me with it.
Oh
and
my
I'm like,
God.
oh my God, my life's about to end in the most horrific way. And of course, I look over and he's just cracking up laughing, because apparently the dog trainer, all it had to do was point at a person and kind of tap an area on the body, and the dog was trained to come up and not actually bite, but put his jaw. So Bob, being Mr. Comedian, has got this guy to sort of tap the groin, and that's where the dogs come over and grab me in the groin and walk me backwards. And I said,
wow,
life is not worth that much, Bob.
I'm sure you'll never forget that one. So, what were you obviously got into the movies, I believe, if you did, if I'm right, with Chuck Norris, with his movies and through his movies. Were you training with Chuck before that?
Yes, well, here's the story with that. I had a partner, still do, Bob Jones, and we had a style called Zendokai. We had over 500 schools at one stage throughout Australia.
Amazing.
And in 1978, Bob went over to the US and, arranged to bring Chuck Norris out to Australia. Chuck had done, I think, Good Guys Wear Black was his recent one, very early movies, so he was interested in promoting the movie, and we brought him out to do some demonstrations on some of the first kickboxing matches ever held in Australia.
Very good.
So I ended up demonstrating on the same card. I was using sai and bow and doing some kata and some, attack sequences. And Chuck was demonstrating his stuff, and we did a number of states. Anyway, we just became really good friends in that short space of time. To which Chuck, upon leaving, said, if you ever get to California, look me up. We'll do some training. And again, as I've often said in interviews, I mean, what an amazing invitation that was for a little Aussie kid, So as it happened, I'd been doing, this is where it gets a bit convoluted. I was doing bodyguard work since 1972, started with the Rolling Stones. And at this stage, I was doing a tour with Linda Ronstadt and James Taylor. A lot of the younger ones might remember Linda, but she was as big as Beyonce in her day. And Linda wanted me to come and work for her full-time in California, in the US. So after a bit of umming and ahhing, off I went. This was in 1979. Because I had Chuck's number, I called Chuck the first day I got there. I started training with Chuck every morning at his house. We would do 3-hour workouts.
Wow.
Every day, 6 days a week. He lived in a place called Rolling Hills Estates, just past LAX airport. So we started training, and he was, of course, in the very early production stages of The Octagon.
Oh, yes.
One of his early, the ninja-based movie.
Yep.
And because Chuck knew I could handle weapons and Okinawan weapons, he asked me if I would play his main nemesis in the movie. So that's how I got cast. And
brilliant.
I helped put a lot of the fight scenes together with the weapon stuff, because Chuck, hadn't used weapons before.
Mm-hmm.
And as you remember, my main role was as Keo. I had the crimson head mask on.
Yes.
Because technically Keo was Asian.
Yeah.
And I fight Chuck at the end of the movie with Sai and with Katana, with the sword.
Mm-hmm.
And it became quite a good little fight sequence. And that's what started my movie career. Octagon was it.
Very good.
In fact, my claim to fame, George, in that movie was, I say to people, I died 8 times because Chuck and myself and 2 other people did all the ninja work because we were masked. And in fact, I remember taking my mum to see it, and I said, if you see somebody go splat, Mum, it's probably me, And,
very good.
Yeah, so that was started, and I did a couple more movies with Chuck. I ended up doing the first few episodes of Walker, Texas Ranger.
Brilliant.
And, in fact, I did 15 guest stars on Walker, as well as I started doing the fight coordinating.
As different characters, sorry?
Yeah, different characters, on Walker, but even doing the fight coordinating, I think it's not really what I want to do. And by the way, it's after getting off of the lead role in Force 5 and everything, that's when I started to branch out and do my own thing, because I just thought, wow, this is a lot of fun. First of all, they're low budget. We know they're low budget. They shoot them on a shoestring budget. I went to the Philippines and all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But I just had a ball because I was still doing my martial arts and meeting amazing martial artists on the sets of these movies. Like,
of course,
you talk about Force 5, you got Benny the Jet Urquidez, a kickboxing legend, Joe Louis, et cetera, and a lot of other martial artists playing stunt roles. So I thought, how good is this? What a great way to make a living.
I know, right? You're telling me. Very jealous, very jealous. So, of course, then you went on to star with Benny again in The Kick Fighter a few years later, right? Well, a number of years later.
Yeah, that was a film. Tony Maharaj, a friend of mine who's from Trinidad, he was a producer. After I think it was Equalizer 2000 was a film I did with the legendary Cirio Santiago. Cirio is like the Steven Spielberg of Philippine movie. And he did a movie that was produced by also the legendary Roger Corman, who was renowned for starting careers of Sylvester Stallone and people like this. So I did Equalizer. Tony saw the movie, was really interested in using me and wanted me to do this film. I don't know what it was originally called, but anyway, Kick Fighter. They're always the most bizarre titles.
I'm actually still waiting. I ordered, funny enough, last week, before we had even arranged this, I had ordered the German media book of Kick Fighter. So it's still on the way, but
waiting. Because I had met Benny Urquidez, of course. We did Force 5, but I'd already started training with Benny even before the Jet Center was formed, which is his famous training center. So we were already friends, and that's how I ended up getting Benny to come over and sort of play. That was also interesting. The only disappointing part was that my character, when you look at the fight, I'm supposed to not be trained. I'm supposed to be like a street kind of fighter, which is why they're calling it kick fighter and whatever. And and it was hard for me because I'd already been training with Sensei Benny, and you're taught to keep the hands up and the chin down and all this. Well, straight away said, oh no, you've got to have your hands down. You're not supposed to be trained. And I remember that, Benny's, to anyone that's met Benny the Jet, he is the loveliest man. He's such a gentleman, but by God, you would never want to get him mad at you. And
I'm sure.
Probably the toughest guy I know, pound for pound, that I've ever met. So we get in the ring, and I'm supposed to be down here. And Benny has this, because he's such a warrior. When Benny puts his head down, and he's got this amazing gaze, as we call it, when he looks at you. So he gets in the ring for the very first take, and I immediately go, "Oh shit!" Yes,
Very
I
good.
still remember going, no, it's just a movie. It's okay, because he just gets in the fight mode. I'm like, geez,
Yeah.
I hope with the bell rings he doesn't think he's doing
It's
it
in a
for real.
very, very intimidating stare that he's got. Yeah,
Very.
definitely.
But we had a lot of fun with that. And, again, as we'll talk about, a lot of the fights back then, I get a chuckle because you do what you do. People unfortunately have the thing about comparing what we did in the 80s and 90s with what they do now. And you can't. It's
No,
evolved. Everything's
exactly.
evolved.
Of
You
course. Yeah,
just
yeah.
did what was the thing to do, like a lot of crescent kicks. It's like you look at Jean-Claude Van Damme. I mean, how many times did he do the splits?
Oh,
And
yeah.
and Chuck would always do spinning crescent kicks and everything else. So that's what you did. And of course, again, we just did the best we could with what we had. There was never any rehearsal time.
Yeah.
You
So
basically put it.
so that switch over then to Hong Kong. So I mean, there's obviously a massive difference from what you were doing with Chuck and with Force Five and that, and then suddenly you're in Hong Kong. How did Samo bring you over there? How did he find you, and how did you get into that?
Well, that came about. Chuck, in the old days, had a partner in crime, called Pat Johnson,
Oh yes.
amazing martial artist.
Hmm.
He did the choreography on the first Karate Kid, and he did quite a number of movies.
Hmm.
So I was a good friend of Pat's. Pat was the one through meeting and working with Jackie that recommended to Jackie that I would be a good person to play in some of these shoots.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cut to, I'm in Japan on tour with Linda Ronstadt, working, again as her personal bodyguard. And we're in a little town near Osaka in Japan, and I get a phone call, and literally, I don't know how they even found me, but in a nutshell, this Asian lady says, "Oh, Richard, Jackie Chan wants you to come and work with him in his next movie. What's your price?" I
Wow.
said, "Wait a minute, what? Jackie wants you to come and what price? That's the first thing she wanted to know was how much would it cost to get me." And I said, "Well, when do you need me?" And she said, "Well, in 3 days." And I said, "Oh, I can't. I'm obligated. I'm on tour for another 2 months."
Hmm.
I believe that, by the way, was Meals on Wheels. That I think the
Oh,
role they were offering me was with Benny, but the Keith
yes.
Vitale role.
So I was
Anyway,
going to say, I
fast.
wonder how you missed that, because I thought that would have been an amazing pairing to have you and Benny there. Yeah.
Oh no, would have been great. But so that passed by. I thought, oh well, that's that. Anyway, sometime later, I get they got in touch with me through my agent and wanted me to come. Jackie wanted me to come and work on Twinkle Twinkle Lucky Stars,
Mm.
and but it came through Pat Johnson recommending me to Jackie. I couldn't do the original offer, and then they came back to me again later on, and
Wow.
so off I went, and that was my first foray into Hong Kong movies, which I tell you what an eye opener,
I'm
because
sure.
I'm on the plane and thinking, oh, I'll be able to do a bit of this, bit of that. I'm a karate guy.
Yeah.
I'm Goju stylist, but having done kickboxing with Sensei Benny and another guy, Pete Cunningham, a dear friend
Oh
and
yes.
trainer
Yeah.
of over 30 years from who also worked on a Hong Kong movie with
That's
me and
right.
Bill, but that's
Right.
another story.
Righting wrongs.
So
Yeah.
I'm off and I get there and yeah, and I'm thinking, well, this will be good. This will be fun. Well, for the first 3 weeks or whatever, you do bugger all, because you do a bit of drama and stuff. But once the fight stuff, and by the way, I was supposed to do the main fight with Jackie, but Jackie had injured his shoulder blade in another movie he was working on. Hence why I did the main fight with Sammo Hung.
Yeah.
But when the fight stuff started, my God, what an eye opener! Because in America, I'm used to 10 or 12-hour days. You do
Hmm.
a bit of rehearsal, you shoot the fight in 2 or 3 days, and you move on.
Yeah.
Well, and I've said this over and over, and I do mean it. We were on the set 18 hours a day, 7 days a week.
My
We do
goodness.
the fight stuff, and took 3.5 weeks to shoot that fight scene with Sammo, and you fight it, you would do it over and over until you basically got what, in this case, Sammo as the director wanted. He had, they had such a level of excellence that they wanted out of the style of fighting
Of
that
course.
they would do. And I remember 3 days into the first days of fighting with Sammo, there's another gentleman who you would know, I call him Shoji Kurata.
Oh,
Kurata
yes.
was a famous Japanese stunt person, fighter, actor. He'd done like 40 movies in Hong Kong.
I've got most of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and he what a gentleman, and he of course was in the same movie, and he's like one of my henchmen, and he could see me getting very frustrated, and he pulled me aside. He said, Richard, he said he could see I was getting, because the timing was different, the techniques were different, the way they throw a punch was different. And he said, let me give a little bit of advice. If you want to do movies here in Hong Kong, he said, basically, don't say anything. Just do whatever they want you to do as many times as they want you to do it.
Wow.
Which, by the way, was usually 30, 40 takes sometimes, depending. And that's what I did. I was always in really good shape. I didn't mind taking impact. I didn't mind getting hit. And I jokingly said to Samo one day, as long as I can hit you back just as hard. And we'll talk about Samo, I'm sure. But, that's how it went. And that's really the main reason that I got. At one stage, I was the only Westerner to ever get invited back to do more than one movie with Jackie in Hong Kong. It's not because I had any amazing abilities over anyone else. I think it's because they knew that I knew how they worked. I would just shut up. I would do whatever was expected of me. I would take the bumps and the knocks.
Sure.
Hence me doing whatever 5 movies there. So that's how it all went. But
wow.
But I sorry to butt into it, but I still remember going back to my hotel room after a couple of days, getting like an hour or maybe 2 hours sleep. And I said out aloud, if I can get through this, I can get through anything.
Hell yeah.
It was that grilling. Having said that, by the way, these guys were doing that year in and year out, often 2 movies at a time. And I'm saying, you're a bit of a baby here. You're complaining. These dudes are getting the crap kicked out of them like on a daily basis, year after year. So I had incredible respect.
Oh man. I mean, I suppose that's the difference today is you couldn't put children through what they went through to become those people that they are. It's child abuse. You couldn't do it, But I mean, what an iconic fight that what you went through and what Twinkle Twinkle Lucky Stars delivered to fans, people like myself. It's there frame for frame, it's just always been implanted as one of the greatest showdowns ever,
Well, and hats off to Sammo Hung. The guy is just, there's nobody I respect more as an action director, actor than Sammo Hung, with how he puts fights together and everything. And the guy is tough. I mean, when he throws a spinning back kick, oh my God, there was a stage where his side kicks me up against that wall about 50 bloody times.
Yeah.
Even when it's a film fight, you can tell when somebody's powerful. And incredible. Of course, obviously goes without saying with Jackie, but Sammo, and there was a stage in that fight where he's on the table and he does this flip. I swing a chair. And I remember when he said, you swing this chair at my legs and I'm going to do this with a half pike or whatever and land on my feet. And I'm literally looking at him and looking around for where the stunt double is, because I'm thinking, there's no fucking way you're going to do this. Well, of course, he did it like 20 times, and I went, oh my God, there's more to this guy. And I just became very good. Sammo took me to editing, and everything. Jackie took me shopping all around Hong Kong. It was a really wonderful time. And thank God, by the way, they liked me. I think Sammo respected I would take the knocks. I'd get flipped over tables, whatever it took, and not complain, which he really respected. Because unfortunately, in those days, if you were a Guilo or there's a lot of Brits working in Hong Kong and stuff, they'd get parts in these movies. And if you weren't part of that inner circle, man, you got treated like shit. They'd be screaming, sure. You're stupid, you have timing, you this, you that. And they were quite brutal. Luckily, because I had a good relationship with Sammo and Jackie, I think they all looked and go, okay, well, he's okay. We'll leave him alone.
But I think because of that also, when you look at the likes of yourself and then you've Mark Houghton and Bruce Fontaine and all those guys who always played that same just throwaway bad guy role, but you always seem to land this memorable, fantastic character, like Magic Crystal, for example. There's another one that's just, I love that role of Ivan,
Well,
it's so
and
crazy.
Magic Crystal, that's still probably the best fight stuff I've ever got
Right.
to do.
I think so.
I there you go. I'm a Russian, for go figure, right? I'm a
Yeah.
blonde, but I'm this Russian dude, and I'm supposed to know all the different sort of Chinese martial arts, of which I didn't, and since I had a lot of that whole thing when she's on the table, me trying to get that move was like, I was like, oh, I could say we have a thing called Mawashioke in karate, but it was very opposite to that. And
yeah. It was a lot of fun.
Laugh.
A lot of fun. So, I mean, from there, obviously, Sammo brought you back for Millionaires Express. That came after Twinkle Twinkle, yeah.
Yes.
And somewhat of a shorter role until the last battle. Were you doing anything else kind of in between that? Was American Ninja around that time? Were you back and forth?
No, I was always back and forth. In fact, I think maybe, yeah, in fact, I think it might have been Millionaires Express that Jackie hurt. No, it couldn't have been that one. There was one film I did where he fell off a skateboard and injured his ankle, and we had 2 or 3 months downtime. Well, I took off back to the Philippines and did the lead in another movie.
Yeah, City Hunter, he was skateboarding in City Hunter.
Maybe it might have been that one. It's hard to remember, but yeah, I every time I got a break, I was off because even City Hunter, that fight, getting back to the way they shoot, that took 6.5 weeks.
Wow, my God.
Of course, they're doing other things as well, but I mean, what a journey. But
so sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, it's just like Magic Crystal, all of those came. See, Wong Jing, of course, directed City Hunter.
Yeah.
How I got to work in Magic Crystal, or vice versa, again, whichever one came first, and it was very comedic. But you said about playing the roles. What I realized very early on is that I remember the first time I always would underplay. If you had to be a bad guy and laugh, you might go, they wanted you to go,
like, yes,
large, that was the style of acting. And I realized very early on, if you're going to be in those movies, you're going to accept the role in that movie, you have to just go along for the ride. It was almost comedic. It was like a caricature, and if you did that, you had a lot of fun. Yeah, exactly. Because Jackie said to me way back, when I first worked with him, he said, Richard, you will never see gratuitous violence or gore or profanity or sex, because he knew his audience was the kids. And if the kids loved his movies, he knew the parents would take them 2 and 3 and 4 times. So he's very smart in deciding what his audience was. And hence, there was a lot of that kind of comedy. The greatest description I heard of Jackie was a reviewer once wrote that watching Jackie Chan in a fight scene was like watching a speeding bullet in reverse.
Wow.
And he got that through watching people like Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin was always about trying to get away from the big, bad, ugly, bad guy. Yeah. And in the process, he'd have the guy run into ladders or whatever. And that's a lot of the shtick that Jackie picked up for his fights, which was his way of being very different and not trying to be a copy of, say, Bruce Lee.
Of course.
Very, very full on. And again, what a smart move, for
Yeah.
to take.
Totally. So back on Millionaires Express, would that have been the first time you worked with Cindy, or would you have known her anyway from tournaments and things beforehand?
No, I didn't. In fact, when I was in Hong Kong shooting Twinkle Twinkle was the first time I heard about this blue-eyed, blonde-haired American girl working in Hong Kong, but I had never met her. So no, I just knew of her for there, but I didn't know of her from the United States or anything. Of course, we went on to do 8 or 9 movies together.
Yeah.
We still are very close friends. So.
Of course. I mean, funny, I was looking at this the other day, and I think in our heads as fans and as viewers, we think you had done 30, 40, 50 movies together. There's always that feeling that Cindy and Richard were always together. There was always it was the movie you looked for when you went to the video store. The next
Right.
Richard and Cindy movie. But yeah, so it was actually only about 9 or 10, right?
Yeah, Raging Honor 1 and 2,
Oh,
China O'Brien 1 and 2, Lady
yeah.
Dragon, Millionaire Express, Maybe Crystal. Yeah, no, it and I and what was it?
Fight to Win. Do you remember this one
Oh yeah, that one
with
too.
with
So
George Chung, I think?
George, I just had lunch with George Chung last week in Los Angeles.
Oh wow, very good.
He's doing great. He's anyway. That's a whole other story with his production company. But this is getting right off the track. But George and for those who don't know, George and Cynthia were boyfriend and girlfriend back
Yes,
when
that's
I
right.
met them. And when I went to LA, I started doing a bit of training with George. I mean, that people do not know. I've never to this day seen somebody that could kick like George Chung. He was
Wow.
world champion. And I'm a Goju guy, put the kick with the back foot, put it back down. And he started these machine gun kicks where you do a round kick,
Yeah.
hook and heel kick, go round and round in a circle.
Mm-hmm.
Most ridiculous power and everything else. So that's
Wow.
a whole other thing that I learned from George.
Yeah. So with Cindy, of course, and that became a big thing for you guys to be around that period of the sort of mid late 80s into the early mid 90s. You just kind of had that, as I say, everyone was wanting that next big movie. Was there any of the things that you had done? Because I mean, I love them all. I could just go on about them forever. Of course, Rage and Honor 1 and 2, I'm still waiting for someone to give us an amazing Blu-ray release because they're so hard to, they're really hard to get movies. I mean, I still have my 90s video. But part two I lost because my video chewed it up. My video player chewed it up and it went. So I'm really hoping for that. But is there any of these kind of movies that you'd wish there was possibly a third one of, or like China O'Brien 3, Rage and Honor 3?
Most people really wanted another China O'Brien movie.
Yeah.
Enjoyed that in the relationship and everything, and even up until not that recent, there was talk of doing another one. Look, it hasn't happened. They'd have to wheel us out in wheelchairs. It would have to be. Maybe we could do a fight scene in an aged care home or something.
That would be absolutely hilarious. A bit of a drug bust in a care home.
Yeah, something like that. That'd be funny. It'd be like Afterlife,
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, but what's still going on, in fact, also just as a bit of, I just got an email yesterday. There's a guy that's written a script called The Last Kumite, and there's again for the last 20 years there's been talk of doing like a martial arts expendable where you get Matthias Hughes and myself and Don Wilson and Olivier Gruner and all these people, and there's the script at the moment it's just been completed, which they're trying to get up. So who knows? It won't be China O'Brien too, but Cynthia myself, I think it'd be fun. Look, would it be groundbreaking? No, I think it would work if you also had a couple of very younger, hot and action stars that would cater to a younger audience. But I think because of people like yourself, there's still such an interest in the characters that we played in those movies of the 90s, 80s,
Absolutely,
and 90s.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a lot of fun if you could get Expendables was that. They're all like old
dudes. Of course.
Dudes.
Yeah.
So why not put us old dudes and females in something? It'd be a lot of fun.
I'll start writing.
Yeah.
So of course, the famous quote from yourself, "Painful." Where did that? I mean, we love that. Samo was.
Yeah. Well, when you did those movies, first of all, there was never sync sound, meaning they never had sound being recorded on set. So for dozens and dozens of movies, people wouldn't even know, but you never even heard Jackie Chan's real voice. He was also dubbed. So they did it after. So on the set, you would be asked to just basically say something in English that would be approximate length of what they thought the Cantonese or Mandarin would be, where they would dub in after the movie's finished. And I'm pretty sure because again that's Samo's typical sense of comedy. he wanted me to say, I might have come up with the actual word. I can't remember. It's here, maybe between us. And I say painful.
Yeah.
And once I say, I hit him again. And he says, no, and you go, how about now? And he said, no, I can't feel anything because my body's all numb.
It's brilliant. It is. It's still today. It is still one of the funniest scenes. It really is.
They t-shirt with painful on it,
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. Your face and painful. But again, even carrying that into other movies, it was such a treat. Something so small that really kind of got dedicated.
Bit of an joke,
Yeah. Like dedicated fans, I think, really wet themselves over that. So they did. So later on, I just wanted to say later on, then you went, would Mr. Nice Guy have been your last Hong Kong kind of movie as such?
Yes. Yeah. So that came about, of course, through Jackie and Sam, having worked with him so much. And as you probably know, they shot that in Melbourne, which is where I grew up, in Melbourne, Australia.
I literally just posted a video today on my channel reviewing, because we just finally got the extended original cut released on Blu-ray this week here in the UK. So very, very excited. And it was brilliant to see you in high definition. So it was, but what I mean, that it was or not, but it was so.
I rather have the penthouse lighting,
Yeah, today maybe, but not, no, back then, no. So it was amazing to see, but such a different take on that end scene. I mean, I kind of thought you were having a bit of a rematch from City Hunter. I was expecting when I initially saw Mr. Nice Guy way back in 97.
That was the whole point. And in fact, at one stage I said to someone, why are you using me if there's not going to be a major fight? Well, the reason is this. Like I said to you, when you're in Hong Kong, there's no unions, there's no overtime, so there's no restriction on basically how long you could shoot.
Sure.
Because it really doesn't cost much. The stunties were on a small monthly retainer. So cut to Australia, where you've got unions and overtime, we ended up being probably 2 months over budget, right?
Oh, right.
Which got to the stage where the producers said, we have to finish this movie. So there was no time for me, because I was Giancarlo, once again, good casting writing. I'm a New York mafioso, a blonde Aussie kid. So I'm playing a role, and I'm a bit of a smartass with the tying him up with the ropes and playing around. Well, of course, everybody wanted to see me get my ass kicked. Yeah. And it didn't happen. In fact, when I get hit by that mining truck, when they're looking, I'm not even there. I'd already been sent home. So it was really a budgetary thing that prevented that end fight from happening, because of course it should have. It should have been a big beat down as a result of me.
Yeah.
My quirkiness as the Giancarlo character.
I mean, I don't want to say it was disappointing, but it was like,
It was disappointing for me too, because again, I said there's no point to using me. It's not like I'm Robert De Niro and you need acting creds, but it was still, to be able to shoot in my hometown and do another movie with them, I thought it doesn't get better than that.
Yes, I'm sure it was nice to go back to that.
And I got to bury my wife.
Yes, that's right, of course.
Hot tub, and there was a day, when my famous line is "Tuck her in, boys," and she gets chucked into the mining pit and buried. And Jackie and Sam both came over to me that day and said, "Oh, why you look so happy today?" And I said, "Don't get into that."
Very good.
And who, Andy Chang, he was very green back then, but he's become the fight coordinator of the day. He did Shang-Chi, and amazing films. He was the fight coordinator in that film. Well, he doubled Judy. He's the one that gets into the pit. And I remember on the day I said, Andy, shave your legs. Your legs are too hairy for my wife. And anyway, that's
very good.
Funny. I saw Andy also just 2 weeks ago in Los Angeles, caught up with him, and
very good.
He's taking off, but
he's really taken off.
Sun team era.
And we actually talked a couple of years ago. I was laying out some scripts for a new production of kind of actually of an Expendable style movie, and we had talked about him coming over to do the action, and then of course then there was
Welcome,
COVID and
mate.
everything else. Well, no, actually,
All right.
whenever
Yeah.
this is stopped
Sorry, I
recording,
gotta go. What
when
time is
this
it?
is stopped recording, we will talk. Do you know, I talked
I'm
to
out of here.
I said to my husband yesterday, I wonder would Richard like to come in and like kind of redo a role from one of the 90s flicks as a gangster in my movie.
Anytime, anytime. It's all fun and games now at
I
this stage.
know, but I think that's the nostalgic part of it for fans and for me is seeing that as you say, that in joke, that return to that. So from that Mr. Nice Guy, I'll not keep you too much longer, but from Mr. Nice Guy, then you've kind of stayed in the Western side of movie making, I suppose, acting, and then and you're doing the action choreography and fight choreography and stuff, and more so with these bigger Hollywood movies such as Mad Max Fury Road, which you also had a starring role in or a part in, didn't
Yeah,
you?
no, I played a role, had a fight scene
I
with
thought I
Charlize.
recognized you. Yeah.
Yeah, shaved head, of course. I looked like an aging biker in that film.
Yeah.
But I get headbutted. I often said, if you're going to get headbutted by somebody, it may as well be by Charlize Theron. She headbutts me, throws me off the giggle horse.
That's right.
I'm starting work on the new Mad Max next month, actually.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant.
With Furiosa, it's all based on that character. So
amazing.
Go on.
Yeah, so I mean, I suppose that felt a bit like it was throwing you back to Equalizer 2000, did it?
Yeah, well, all those films, as you know, when you did films with Corman and Sirio in the Philippines, they were all rip-offs of whatever was the popular movie that was about to come out. So it was the apocalyptic film, as per Mad Max. Now, exactly, that's the whole idea was they would get. This is why, by the way, there's so much security and content. You have to sign so many confidentiality forms now when you do movies. Because in the old days, if it got out what the theme of the movie was, a smaller budget company would get wind of it,
rip it off,
people like me to do a rip-off, have it made in 4 weeks and out long before that movie actually even got made. So,
what a shame. And then I seen as well through your own posts and through certain news and things, you've obviously been working with Margot as Harley Quinn. Looking after her with the action and stuff. That's a fantastic, notch in the belt also, right?
Oh man, and what a wonderful person to work with. Margot, I literally said to her, I reckon I could teach her just about any fight scene you could think of and she could do it. She is that talented and that committed. I did both Suicide Squads, of course, the first one, and the second one. Unfortunately, those rotten bloody producers didn't credit a whole bunch of us on the actual film,
What a shame.
Which is a real shame because we put a lot of work into that. But what a thrill to work with like Will Smith in the first one and Margot Robbie and of course people like Scarlett Johansson, Ghost in the Shell.
Yes, of course.
People, the reason those people have the careers they have is because of the level of commitment and the level of excellence they demand of themselves. It was just a dream.
Very good.
People like that.
And do you find that people like that again would know your work from the 80s and 90s? Would they have been fans, let's say?
No, they're too young. I mean, really think about it. You think of the age of a Margot, they're too young. That's a bygone era, unless you're particularly followed that sort of thing and you get a kick out of it, or you're of a more advanced age. But it's a bit like, me working with Stevie Nicks or Linda Ronstadt, for instance. A lot of the kids don't know who these people were. You have to tell them, unless again they absolutely follow the music industry. And it's the same with us. This is why I get it. This is why I'm doing more fight coordinating, because the older you get, the less roles you have, even though physically I'm totally capable.
Oh, yeah.
You're a product. They don't want to see, unless you're Liam Neeson. I worked with Liam Neeson on Blacklight early in the year.
Oh, very good, yes.
Which was great. And doing the next Mad Max. But they want to see the younger kids running around, unless, again, you're very established. Like Liam created a career in action after Taken. It was almost by accident. so that became his little selling point and everything. God bless him. But there's not a lot could do it. Sylvester Stallone, Clint Eastwood, of course. But the good news is, by the way, and I can't forget, I've been signed to do the lead in a film called Scar Tissue.
Very good.
We're shooting it here in Australia. It was originally written. Andrew Mackenzie's a friend now I've had meetings with, and it was written for the US. It's now been rewritten for Australia.
Brilliant.
And he asked me if I would do it. Came about because he was doing a film called Gauntlet, and he contacted my agent and said, we want 80s style action, so we want Richard fights. And I said, well, what does that mean to you? And he said, well, where you punch something and it actually knocks them down, and it's a bit untidy and blah blah blah. Anyway, I had a meeting, and a week or so later, I got a call, and he and David Egby, by the way, David Egby is the DP on it. He shot the original Mad Max movie and another film called Salute of the Jugger, or Blood of Heroes.
You were in that, weren't you? Yeah.
I was in that one, and so they're teamed up, and they said, we want to put Gauntlet on the back burner, and we have a script called Scar Tissue, and we want you to play the lead. I think that came out of meeting me and realizing that I wasn't walking around with a walking stick.
Yes, yeah.
And I could still do, and it's totally action based. It's kind of like an Unforgiven, the Eastwood role.
Very good.
And I'm so excited because it's probably the best role I've ever been offered, and we're working on that. I can't shoot it till the end of the year because of Max, but how exciting is that? So it ain't over till it's over.
It is. You're telling me.
A lot of fights in it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm very excited.
Look forward to that. Absolutely. Well, listen, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much for your time. This has been an absolute pleasure. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's late here. It's 11:15 at night.
That's why you want to get off.
Listen, I could go on for another few hours. Trust me.
You can tell I'm not a bad talker, so I don't.
No. Wait, we might do a part 2 someday if you're up for it.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure, and all the best for all the viewers out there. So,
appreciate it.
I'm glad there's still a fan base for some of those movies we did. It's been an incredible journey, and the journey still continues. So
absolutely,
it's been an exciting time.
Well, you've definitely entertained me for a long time, and the memories are more than enough. Absolutely. It's just adds to it. Thank you very much, Richard.
Let's see you later. Bye.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And of course, a massive thank you once again to Richard Norton for joining me on this episode of Untold Stories. It was an absolute pleasure. Don't forget to check out the rest of the YouTube channel for my unboxing and review videos of Hong Kong movies and other Asian cinema. Head on over to invincibleasia.com to check out my full reviews, and follow me on Instagram @InvincibleAsia and @MovieMisfit for more. Until next time, enjoy your Kung Fu, and I'll see you soon.